Yo, what's up, everybody? It's David Brodeur, AKA Brilly, and today we're going to go and learn a little bit about World Creator. I was able to get my hands on World Creator through a collaboration that Otoy had for their Black Friday sale. And ever since then, I've grown in love with it. Today, we're going to jump in. I'm going to show you how we can get patterns and logos and shapes and any kind of design, really, and incorporate that into a terrain in the landscape. And it's going to be super easy for anybody to follow. So let's just jump in there and do this. All right, so here we are in World Creator, and I absolutely love softwares that have presets. There's nothing easier than to learn a software that comes with presets, so you can basically just reverse engineer, and build anything from that, and that's where you want to be as an artist. You want to be able to take an asset or a file or a scene, anything like that, and be able to reverse engineer it to figure out how it was built. And then you can build your own, and it gives you a nice starting point too, something that's professional, and then you can just accent on it. So that's exactly what we're going to start off today. I'm going to use this Crater Moon scene file that comes with it. And what we're going to do here is, if you come into where it says biomes, just select this project, just click on that tab, and you can see you've got a whole bunch of different styles and shapes, and you can tweak it and adjust it and do whatever the heck you want with it. I'm going to keep this stuff default though for now. We can move around in our scene here and kind of pan through and zoom in a little bit. We will adjust some of this stuff here a little bit later, and we can take a look at some of the height of this and mess around. But what we're going to do right now is, if you go to where we just clicked on this tab that says projects, we're going to go to this tool right here, and this is where we're going to be able to get and access our filters. And you can see here that if I turn stuff on and off, you can see what these are all doing. We've got that dry, rocky, sharp, it says. We've got erosions, and you can turn these on and off again, and you can go through in any of these if you just select it and go into the actual settings and the attributes of this and change it, which we will do in a little bit too. But what we want to do before any of this is go to add filter, and I'm going to select add filter, and I'm going to go to design, and I'm going to go to height map. Because basically what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to take a logo, a pattern, any sort of image-based thing that's black and white, and we're going to be able to apply that on top of this really cool crater landscape that we've got here and join that in. So now in that design height map here, nothing's happening quite yet, but we have to plug in what we want from our height map. So all you got to do is click where it says none on that little thumbnail here, and that will bring up our Finder window. And from there, I've got a bunch of logos. I've got the Octane logo, I've got the Otoy logo, and I got the Render logo here. The first one I'm going to do is just this first Octane logo. Now this is just a clean black and white vector logo here that I've brought in, and it is currently a JPEG. All these are JPEGs that I have here, if you're wondering what file format I'm using. And I'm just going to say okay. And just like that, we've added in that Octane Render logo. Now we're going to want to mess with the overall size of this. You can actually tell it to repeat, which currently right now that is off. It's too large right now in the scene to see that repeat, so I'll turn that on in a moment. But we have scaling, so let's turn this scaling way down, and you're going to see it's probably going to start looking a little bit funky here because we do have to mess with some of the height and blending of these two together. And let me just turn on repeat so you can see, you can just duplicate that across your scene as well. You can mess with the height scale here and the height offset here. The height offset is going to be the overall terrain itself, but the height scale is going to mess with specifically the height of this logo. And if we come down here, you can see distribution. Messing around with the blend value and the value will also have some really cool effects as well. So I can start bringing this value down, and same with this one, right? And you can begin to kind of play around with this a little bit more. Now I'm going to go back up to the scale here, and let's do like, I don't know, 0.25. And let me offset this. So I'll offset it in X as well as Z, because I kind of want this to be right in the center of this crater here. and I'll offset it in Z and just kind of get it right in the middle. Yeah, something like that's pretty good, right? It's getting close. Perfect. There we go. All right, and just like that, we've added the logo in there. Now, there's a couple things that we're going to want to take note of here. The first one, we can invert this as well. So if you don't want it to pop out, we can push that in. Now, something else though is that along the logo, the edges aren't getting really refined, but that's where this graph is really going to kind of come in and play. I can kind of pull this up and down too. You can see that we're kind of reducing the overall depth that is coming in here. But again, we can just go back into that height scale to kind of bring this up a little bit more. And you can see we're getting more and more depth. Now the edges still aren't super clean and refined, even though I'm getting more height out of this. Now I can also jump into this value and maybe push that value up, and you can see that we're going to get a little bit more of that edge quality. But now if we go into the graph and I start pulling up some of these values here, you can see that we're starting to kind of refine some additional edges. And again, I'm probably going to want to go back in and now adjust the height of this yet again. Maybe I'll come in here into the blend value and begin to bring this up. Right? And now you can see that we're kind of much more clearly have this logo in here where it's a little bit more obvious. Now, something that I did notice is that inside this crater here, it's really kind of rocky, but then where this logo imprint is, it's smooth. You might like that, but you also might not want to have it just be this smooth vector. And so what I did was I made another vector, and then I just got some brushes in Photoshop and stamped some brushes on here. So it wasn't just black where it was black and white where it was white. There's a little bit of a mixture. So I'll show you that right now. So I use just this kind of like splattered paint texture thing here, right, to get that. And you can see I've done a couple variations of this, of sizes. And then I took this and I basically blurred it to get it to be a little bit soft, changed the scale, made it less opacity, stuff like that. And I ended up going with this one. So the scale is smaller and it's not blurred. It's still very sharp. But it's not as dark, right? And this was able to give me this nice kind of blend. So let me import this one. And so you can just keep swapping this out. You just click on this little thumbnail right here, and I can go into the Octane Render logo 05 that I have. And you're going to see that now we get some kind of rocky look in here as well that kind of blends a little bit better with the whole mountainscape. Now, if we were to go back to our main project here, or actually just at the top where it says global, and at the top where it says global, here's our precision and it's set to 1 meter. The lower you go, the more detail we can kind of get out here. Let me just zoom in so it's a little bit more obvious, and let's go higher. Let's go to like 2 meters. You can see we're getting less, and let's go to 4 meters. Same thing again, right? However, if I go to 1/2 meter or 1/4 meter, right? And this is where we're going to be able to really start dialing in. Now, the lower you get, you do risk of possibly crashing, so I recommend maybe not doing that until you're ready to export if you do need that kind of level of detail, depending on where your camera is going to be. So kind of think that through a little bit. But, I seem to be always fine, at least at 1/4 meter in here. And then we can go back to our filters. You can really start playing around with that height map a little bit more. If you want to try to get a little bit more refined edge, we can start and begin to push these up, to help define that corner in here a little bit more, and maybe the other edge too. Right, and you'll notice at a certain point, the logo kind of falls off, and pulling any of the rest of this graph isn't really doing anything. But now you can see that we're kind of getting this really kind of nicely in here, and this super kind of sharp, clean edge to it. And let's scroll on down, mess around with stuff, scaling, blend size, rotation, whatever you kind of need to really mess with. But these are pretty simple and straightforward. And then this is where the fun of reverse engineering comes, going into the dry rock and, reversing that, inverting it, turning it back the other way. This is where you can begin to get some of your really, really cool looks in here. And then we can come in and mess with, let's see, right? Let's just increase sharpness strength. Okay, interesting. I'm fine with that. I actually think that looks pretty cool. Let's go into the erosion and let's scroll on down here. Rain strength right now is to 0.5. I like to jump things up pretty drastically, and then you can kind of really see, a lot of what they're doing. Interesting. Let's bring this down well below. Right? You can kind of see the wear that this has had on our scene. General strength, let's go from 50 and let's go above, and you're going to see probably a lot more wear in here. Yeah, so a lot more erosion, flattening, kind of everything out. The logo's really kind of standing out now, though. Super kind of unique looks. I'm loving it, but this is, again, all part of the benefit of really tweaking and kind of playing off of a lot of the qualities that are already kind of built into these presets. So I think I'll go somewhere maybe in between here. Let's check out the, let's see what this effect is. This is already set to 100%. So let's drop this down and see. Okay, so simulation hydraulic. This is kind of interesting. So there's a bunch of different other erosion effects. Let me bring this back to 100 here and really just explore. I'm not going to go through and click every single one of these. This is where I think, you probably will want to do this and just mess around. This is like the fun of it, like really dialing in the look that you're kind of hoping for. See, rain strength. I'm sure it will flatten out maybe some of the peaks and stuff like that. Let's go into the craters, right? And so you can see which craters are what. This first one here is the large crater. You can have that just completely turned off, gives you a totally different type of a landscape and look. I'm going to keep it on, but you can go in here and tweak and adjust all those settings as well. So I think this overall is looking pretty good. And maybe there's a couple more settings that you want to tweak in here, but generally speaking, I'm pretty happy with the overall look that we're getting. I might tweak a little bit more, and then we'll come back and continue. So while I was making a few tweaks, I came across something that I wanted to show you in case you run into this as well. And this can happen from changing the height and messing around with that stuff. I found it through increasing general strength of the rock sharp preset that's built into the filters. So when I increased this, I was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, I want a lot more like rockiness all around my scene. But then I got this other kind of color layer in here. And if you go to this little layers right here, we're able to open up the materials. And if it didn't pop up instantly for you, just click on this gradient here and all these details will then come in. And I notice in here is where we're going to be able to kind of change some of what's happening here. Now, maybe you like this and maybe you want to add and include this. But if you don't, I was able to just come in here and turn this amount down, and it stops that kind of blending that is occurring within that. Now, I also came across this really cool thing that's called pick. So let's increase this amount again now that we've kind of cleared that. And if you just say pick, you can actually pick other colors. So hit Control to record with the mouse, right? And it's just kind of like coming in here and recording. You can hit R to kind of reset that. But this is kind of cool too. And it's cool because you can also pick from off screen. So it says, yeah, here, hold Control to record the colors with your mouse. So that's exactly what I'll do. I'll come off to the side and, I just, whatever's on my desktop here, I didn't have any kind of image or window popped up and ready to go. But it was like blue from this Windows background, right? So this is kind of cool. And you can go in here and really tweak the colors. I mean, this is super interesting. This is not what I want. So I can hit R and it will clear that out. And maybe I want just black in there. Now this is, super overkill, but maybe I can tweak this to something super low and, maybe make some sort of blend in between. Again, this is all where you just kind of pick and have fun with it. And then in this erosion, I jump back in here, and this erosion multiplier. Now, doing it sparingly right now, by default it's set at 1. You can see you get some really cool and wild looks, but for this you kind of really start to lose the integrity of that logo in there. So I don't recommend bringing it all the way into the area of 2, right? So that erosion multiplier was 1. So let's just try like 1.25. Right now you get some really cool like running like erosion rivers that were where the sediment all kind of broke apart and eroded as it leads to the logo. And I think this is kind of a really interesting look here. All right, so once you get that look dialed in to exactly where you want, make sure you're saving. You can just save right up here. And then when you're ready to export, we'll come back into this window to the right side and you can hit the save button. And it's the little drive here, and it says export presets. So we can just say add, and I want to export a height map. There's going to be a handful of things that I want to export, but once you do the height map here, you can see it says export elements, and we've got height map, and I want to add to this because I want the color map, I want the height map, I want a normal map for these. So I'll do these 3 different mats here. Now with the height map, this is one thing that's important. The setting by default for format is set to raw. To bring this into Octane, this raw format is not going to come in to the node editor. And so I'm going to change this to an EXR, and that will then, instead of 32-bit float EXR, that will work just fine. And so now let's just set up our export settings. So down here at the bottom, it says export all. So if you just click that export all, it'll export all of these into the world creator folder. But if I come up and I hit this little save, you can see here, if I just do it by default, it's going to save in my world creator, in my documents, in an export folder. But now I can kind of more specifically pick where I want. So that's where I'm going to do. I'm going to set up my file path here. Now you can save each one out individually like that and go through each single one, or you can set up and select a folder here and then have them all saved in that, and then you can export all and it will all go into one location. All right, now that we've got all that exported, let's hop into Cinema 4D and I'll show you how to bring all these textures in. Okay, here we are in Cinema 4D. All I've got is a simple plane set up in here, and we're gonna make a glossy material, and I'll get my exports. So I've got my height, color map, and normal map in here. Drag those in, they'll appear as an image texture. All right, so I'll bring my height map down here for displacement. I'll bring my color map node up here, so I'll plug that into the diffuse, obviously no normal into normal, and then we'll right click, I'll just get that displacement node and plug these in, and let's just add this material to our plane, and I'll drag and drop this over. You know, in the glossy material I did crank up the roughness here, so the surface has a little bit. Let's just zoom in here with the camera, either camera here. Now, one thing we will notice is that the quality is pretty darn low. So we will want to open that up and go into the displacements again. And remember, the level of detail is set substantially low. Maybe increases. I mean, again, this is going to depend a lot on how much detail and how close your camera is to your scene here. And from this current view, we're not really seeing it, but also the height currently of this is set pretty low. So maybe I'll tell the height to be like 35. Let's bring the mid-level to like 0.5. And now you can kind of see the overall interaction that we are getting here. Let's maybe swap cameras for a moment. Again, you know, in any of this, start messing around with what that height is, with where the angle is to the camera. Jump in. This camera is kind of just overall flat and straight down. But I got a really basic little light setup, you know, just a Octane sky. I come in here and zoom. You can see all that detail is still there. I probably want to tweak the lighting just a little bit to make this pop here, but that's really it. You know, we're going to get this super cool visual with the logo in there, and really pretty fast on any machine, because we're just using displacements now to drive all that detail and not actually needing to make that with really heavy geometry. And while you're in here, if you want to like mess around a little bit more, you could always get a dirt node, right? If you want to like separate some of this stuff a little bit more in Octane, you could get a color correction, and you could get an Octane gradient. So let's go and find an Octane gradient. I probably passed it. Let me just type it in. Say Octane gradient. Boom, right there. And let's plug that Octane gradient in. Let's plug this color correction in between, and we'll put the image texture in there and plug the color correction in. And then in the dirt node here, I'll plug that into the brightness. And now you can see, I mean, really simply, even if I just start increasing the strength and then the radius, you'll see that, you know, we're obviously getting some change. I come into this gradient. Let me pull this back, right? You can see that we're going to start. I'll just go a lot. Right now, you almost get like this snowy mountain, you know, kind of effect here. But you know, now you're really separating. It's like a little bit more clearly visible, some of this stuff. So you know, it doesn't have to be that extreme one way or the other. But you know, then you can come in here and, you know, even mess around a little bit more with the dirt node and kind of the compositing of both of these together. Maybe even this, you know, we bring in a little bit of a dark blue value back into that area rather than just pure black, right? You can just begin to mess with. I just made it more saturated so you can see it is actually doing something. When I had it super dark, it was a little bit less obvious, but this is where it's super fun now, just to kind of tweak and play around with the differences here. Bring some of that white back in, right? And you know, right now I'm doing very much extreme differences, but like if I came back in and brought in some cooler tone again, maybe something that's not so saturated, I think would be good. Maybe something like this, right? Something that blends a little bit more. Maybe I'll go a little bit brighter on it. And then you can kind of start to begin to separate those surfaces just a bit more. But this is all the fun invested in this, is really coming in here and being able to tweak all that stuff in World Creator, then to be able to come in here and tweak all this stuff inside of Octane, you know, and then you really begin to get all that kind of control back. I can expand this out if we wanted to get a little bit more of that white cap in there. But you know, having all this play, you know, and being able just to tweak and adjust things in Art Direct, lots of control here. And there's nothing more fun than being able to jump into a software and be the art director like that. Thank you so much for watching the demo today. I hope you guys will start learning and using World Creator a lot more, creating landscapes. Become that designer in 3D, right? This is like a perfect example of that. How do we get that logo? How do we get a design? How do we get a pattern, incorporate it into terrain? I would love to see the work that you do. Definitely share, tag me in it, and I'd love to take a look and comment on it. All right, till next time, peace.